Before we start, if you enjoy the story, please leave a like and check if you're subscribed. The Averyn Summit's Grand Hall could have been mistaken for a palace from ancient Earth, if not for the three suns casting their tricolored light through the vaulted glass ceiling. Jackson Reed stepped through the arched entrance and let his eyes adjust to the amber, violet, and pale gold illumination. His attention snagged on a figure sitting alone at a table near the eastern colonnade. Loose skin, black hair woven into intricate braids, and golden markings traced across her forehead and cheekbones. Pointed ears rose above the braids, and her posture remained absolutely straight in ornate cream and gold armor that marked her as nobility. The table before her overflowed with untouched delicacies, crystal decanters of wine. Fruits releasing sweet perfume. Jackson watched as delegates approaching her section smoothly altered their path to avoid passing too close. The blue-skinned woman's fingers tightened around her wine glass stem. Reed. Director Calloway appeared at his elbow. "Who is she?" Jackson asked. "Her name is Alyra. Every delegate who's shown her favor has faced career-ending scandals within the week. Stay away from her." Calloway moved off. Jackson remained where he was. This wasn't random exclusion. This was orchestrated. He started walking. The crowd parted, creating a clear path to her table. He stopped beside the empty chair to her right. "May I sit?" Her amber eyes flicked to the watching crowd, then back to his face. "You don't want to do that," she said, her voice musical with an edge underneath, "because in 3 days you'll mysteriously remember urgent business back on Earth." "It's what always happens." Jackson pulled out the chair and sat. Relief flashed across her face before she could suppress it. "I'm Jackson Reed, Earth's negotiation specialist. I know who you are, the human who refuses to follow protocols. Is that my reputation?" The polite version. He leaned back deliberately. "And you are Alyra, of the third house of Saravon." A server placed wine in front of Jackson, avoiding looking at Alyra entirely. Jackson lifted his glass toward her. "To new acquaintances." She stared at him, then slowly lifted her own glass. They touched with a soft chime. "You're making a mistake," she said, but she drank anyway. "I usually am." This time her smile reached her eyes. "Tell me about Saravon," he said. Her fingers traced the rim of her glass. "My people were once a major power. The third house was systematically erased from every treaty, every diplomatic record. We carry a genetic marker that makes us incompatible with certain technologies, inconvenient for those who rely on those technologies to maintain power. You've been excluded because you're immune to something. Some truths are dangerous to speak aloud at diplomatic summits." Their eyes held. He could smell something like jasmine and ozone coming from her. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Because someone has to keep reminding them that we still exist." A chime rang through the hall, the signal for the formal session. "I should go," Alyra said, but she didn't stand. "Where are you sitting?" "Observation gallery. My credentials allow me to attend but not participate. That seems like a waste." He stood and offered his hand. She stared at his outstretched hand, then slowly placed her hand in his. Her skin felt warm, smoother than human skin. They walked toward the session chambers together. Whispers followed. At the entrance, Alyra turned toward the stairs to the observation gallery. Jackson kept walking beside her. "The human delegation sits on the main floor," she said. "I'm aware. You can't just watch me." They climbed together and found seats near the front rail. Her shoulder brushed his. Below, Calloway looked up, his face darkening. He made a sharp gesture. "Return now." Jackson smiled and turned his attention to the chamber. "They'll come after you," Alyra said quietly. "Your career, your reputation, let them try." She turned to look at him fully. "Why? Why would you risk everything for someone you just met?" He met her gaze. "Because someone who comes here alone, knowing what she'll face, that's not someone who should be sitting alone. And because whoever's trying so hard to keep you isolated is afraid of what would happen if you weren't." The lights dimmed. In the reduced light, Alyra's golden markings glowed brighter. "Thank you," she whispered. 2 hours into the session, a recess was called. Alyra rose to leave, but Jackson caught her wrist gently. "Have dinner with me tonight. Somewhere away from here." "That's an even worse idea. I'm full of bad ideas." She looked at their joined hands. "The night market. 2 hours after sunset. Don't bring security." Sounds romantic. It sounds dangerous. When she smiled, it transformed her face entirely. Jackson found the night market sprawling through the old quarter, illuminated by bioluminescent lanterns. Alyra waited near a spice merchant's stall, no longer wearing formal armor. Dark fabric that moved like water, her braids partially unwoven, softer now. "You came. Did you think I wouldn't?" She led him deeper into the market to a small tea house. Inside, a server gestured them toward a private alcove. They settled onto cushions. Tea arrived, steaming with a scent like cinnamon. "What did you mean earlier about surviving 3 summits?" he asked. "At the first summit, the delegate who welcomed me was found dead 2 days later. At the second, a diplomat who offered me a place at her table was recalled within a week, charged with misuse of funds." She met his eyes. "You sat beside me. What do you think happens next?" "Nothing, because I'm human, and we're unpredictable when someone tries to push us around. Or because whoever's doing this wants you close to me for reasons we haven't figured out yet. You're the first human to make direct contact with me. Maybe you were sent here because someone knew you'd do exactly what you did. You think I'm being manipulated. I think we both might be." The tea house door chimed. The server appeared with a small device and handed it to Alyra, who looked at the display and went very still. "What is it?" Jackson asked. She showed him the screen. An explosion had occurred in the Summit Compound's residential wing. Preliminary evidence suggested it originated from the third house quarters. Her quarters. That's impossible. I don't keep anything volatile there. It doesn't matter. What matters is what they're going to claim happened. Security forces would already be moving. They'd find she wasn't in her quarters, discover she'd left without logging her departure. Alyra's hand found his, fingers interlacing in a grip that trembled. "I warned you. I told you this would happen. They're not trying to isolate me anymore. They're trying to eliminate me completely. And you just made yourself my accomplice." Jackson squeezed her hand, feeling her pulse racing where their wrists pressed together. "Then I guess we better figure out who they are before they finish the job, because I'm not letting you face this alone." Alyra pulled him through the tea house's back exit into a narrow alley. Bioluminescent lanterns cast blue-green shadows across her face as she pressed against the wall, listening. "They'll check the market surveillance first. We have maybe 10 minutes. "Who's they?" "Summit Security. Or whoever's pretending to be." She started moving deeper into the alley. "Does it matter?" Jackson followed, his boots splashing through puddles. "It matters if we're going to prove you didn't blow up your own quarters." She stopped abruptly. When she turned, her amber eyes blazed. "You think there's some tribunal where I get to present evidence? They don't need proof. They need an excuse. So what's your plan?" "Run, survive. Everything else is negotiable." They emerged into a wider street. Alyra kept to the shadows despite her distinctive blue skin. "I mean to get something from a contact. Someone who might have information." They walked in silence for several blocks, the market gradually giving way to industrial areas. Finally, Alyra stopped at a door marked only with a symbol. She knocked twice, paused, then knocked 3 more times. The door opened, revealing a reptilian face with vertical pupils and scales that shimmered between green and bronze. "You bring a human to my door," the reptilian said. "That's new. I need your help, Siska. Few can pay for it." The door opened wider. "Come in." Inside, the space opened into a cluttered workshop filled with equipment and weapons. Siska climbed to reach a high shelf, her tail helping her balance. "I heard about the explosion. Heard they're blaming you." She glanced at Jackson, heard he sat beside you like you were someone important. "He doesn't know what he's gotten into," Alyra said. I'm standing right here, Jackson said. Siska dropped down with a small data crystal. Surveillance footage from your quarters. Footage that didn't make it into official records. She held it just out of reach. What are you offering? What do you want? Safe passage off-world when this goes bad. Agreed. Siska handed over the crystal. Alyra inserted it into a display terminal. Images flickered. The corridor outside her quarters, timestamped 2 hours before the explosion. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then a figure appeared, moving toward Alyra's door. The figure produced a device and attached it to the locking mechanism. 30 seconds later, they entered. Can you enhance the image? Jackson asked. Siska manipulated the controls. The figure's face remained obscured, but one detail stood clear. A marking on their forearm visible when they reached for the door. An intricate design that seemed to shift and move. That's a consortium mark, Alyra said quietly. Vraxin Consortium. The insectoid species? Jackson remembered them from briefings. They control most communications networks, and they've been pushing hardest for my exclusion. Alyra's hand trembled slightly. This proves they framed me. It proves someone with a consortium mark entered your quarters, Siska corrected. Marks can be faked. This gives you questions, not answers. Alyra ejected the crystal and pocketed it. When she turned to Jackson, vulnerability had been replaced by steel. You should go back to the human delegation. Tell Calloway I coerced you. You can still walk away. And you? I keep running. Jackson closed the distance between them. I don't run from things just because they're complicated. This isn't complicated, it's fatal. But she didn't step back. You'll lose everything. You said your people carry a genetic marker that makes them incompatible with certain technologies. What technologies? She glanced at Siska, who shrugged. Neural control networks. The Vraxin Consortium developed them 3 generations ago. Sold them as translation matrices, coordination systems. Most species adopted them eagerly, but my people are immune. We can't be controlled. Controlled, Jackson repeated. The Consortium isn't using these networks for translation. They're using them for influence. Subtle manipulation of decision-making. Nothing obvious, but enough to guide trade agreements, diplomatic positions. They've been building a shadow government for decades. She met his eyes. And my people are the only ones who can't be influenced. That's why they eliminated the third house. That's why they tried. Some of us survived. But every few years, one of us tries what I'm trying. None of us have succeeded. How many delegates are compromised? All of them, probably. Except the humans. You're too new. They haven't integrated their technology into your systems. But they're trying. The trade agreements this week half include clauses requiring adoption of consortium communication standards. Once signed, humanity becomes just another controlled species. She pulled her hand from his. That's why I'm here. To stop Earth from making the same mistake. Sirens wailed outside. Time's up, Siska said. Summit Archives, subsection 7. There's an access tunnel outside the security perimeter. I'll send coordinates. She moved to the door. Go. They slipped out and ran. Jackson's lungs burned as they navigated unfamiliar territory. Alyra moved with surprising speed, her hand finding his at intersections. The sirens grew louder, then faded as they changed direction. The archives are restricted, Jackson said between breaths. We'll need credentials. You have diplomatic credentials. They'll be flagged. Then we improvise. She pulled him into a doorway as a security patrol passed. They pressed together in the shadows, her chest rising and falling against his, her breath warm on his neck. You're good at that, R2. It's my specialty. Her hand came up to his chest, fingers spreading over his heart. I didn't want to drag anyone else into my fight. I know, but I'm glad you're here. He cupped her face, his thumb tracing along her cheekbone just below the golden markings. Her skin felt fevered. Her eyes searched his. "We're going to stop them," he said. "You don't know that." "No, but I know we're going to try." She kissed him. Fast and fierce, her mouth hot against his, tasting like the tea they'd shared and something uniquely her. He responded instinctively, his free hand sliding into her hair, finding the braids and warm skin beneath. She made a sound low in her throat and pressed closer. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "We should move," she said, but didn't move. "We should." They stayed frozen for another heartbeat. Then Alyra pulled away and checked the street. "Clear. Come on." They ran toward the archives. The Summit Archives occupied a building that looked more like a fortress than a library. Gray stone walls rose 4 stories, windowless except for narrow slits near the roof. "We're not going through the front," Alyra said. She led him around the perimeter to a service entrance half hidden behind waste recyclers. She produced a small device and pressed it against the access panel. Numbers flickered across the screen. "Siska gave it to me at the first summit. She said I'd need it eventually." The lock disengaged. Alyra pulled the door open and slipped inside. The air smelled like dust and recycled atmosphere. They moved quickly through the maintenance level. Alyra navigated with confidence, like she'd studied the layout extensively. "I've been planning for this possibility since I arrived. Memorized every exit, every service tunnel." She glanced back. "Survival is what I'm good at." They climbed 3 flights to a door marked restricted access, authorized personnel only. "This is subsection 7, where they keep historical records. Treaties, agreements, correspondence between houses and species." She used the device again. This lock took longer to bypass, but finally released. The archive stretched before them in rows of databanks and physical storage. Climate control kept the temperature cold. Motion sensors tracked their movement, but no alarm sounded. "They're not monitoring this section," Alyra said, "or everything here is already sanitized." "Then what are we looking for? Something they missed." "My house kept meticulous records. If any survived the purge, they'd be here." She moved down one of the rows, scanning labels. The consortium's neural networks weren't always presented as benign technology. In the early days, there were debates, concerns. Those concerns would be documented. Jackson took another row, searching for anything related to the third house or the Vroxen Consortium. "Here," Alyra said. He found her crouched at a data terminal, fingers moving across the interface. "Trade negotiations from 70 years ago. Before my house fell, the consortium was offering their neural networks as part of a communication package. My ancestors raised objections." She pointed at text. They documented concerns about the technology's potential for misuse. "Requested independent testing." The request was denied. "On what grounds?" "Too expensive. Too time-consuming. The technology had already been adopted by other species without incident." She continued scrolling. "But here, one of my ancestors commissioned a private study anyway. Hired independent researchers to analyze the architecture." "What did they find?" Alyra's face had gone pale, her golden markings standing out starkly. "They found exactly what the consortium denied existed. Hidden protocols embedded in the network code. Protocols that allowed for remote influence over connected individuals. Nothing so crude as direct control, more like weighted suggestions that felt like the person's own thoughts." She looked up. The researchers submitted their findings to the Galactic Council. 2 weeks later, the entire research team died in a transport accident. The findings were dismissed as fabricated. And 6 months after that, my house was accused of conspiracy. They eliminated everyone who knew the truth. Everyone except us. We scattered, went into hiding. Her hand touched her own face, tracing the golden patterns. "I refused. If they were going to hunt us, I wanted them to see me coming." Jackson knelt beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Can you copy those files?" "Already doing it." She pulled out the data crystal and connected it to the terminal. "But this is just evidence of what happened 70 years ago. It doesn't prove anything about now. It establishes pattern. intent. We still have to convince people who are already under their influence. She ejected the crystal once the transfer completed. How do you persuade someone they're being manipulated when the manipulation makes them believe they're thinking clearly? We find someone who isn't compromised. Someone with authority. Like who? Every delegate at this summit uses consortium networks. She stood. Even if we broadcast this to every species in the sector, they'll dismiss it as conspiracy theory. What about Earth? You said we're not fully integrated yet. If we can get this information to the right people before the trade agreements are signed, your delegation is here to sign those agreements. Do you really think they'll listen to you now? They'll listen if we make them listen. How? He reached for her hand, twining his fingers with hers. We go back to the Senate. Right now, while the morning session is starting, we walk into that chamber and we broadcast everything, the surveillance footage, the historical records, all of it, to every delegate present. That's insane. Security will arrest us the moment we're spotted. Probably. But they can't arrest us before we transmit the data. And once it's out there, once every species sees what the consortium has been hiding, they'll still deny it. But something shifted in her expression. Hope fighting against cynicism. But at least we'll have tried. Exactly. She studied his face, her thumb rubbing small circles against his palm. You understand what this means? If we do this, there's no going back. They'll hunt us. Both of us. I know. And you're still willing. I'm still willing. She pulled him closer, her free hand coming up to his chest. Why? You could walk away right now. Save yourself. Because if I walk away, Earth signs those agreements. Humanity becomes another species in the Consortion's network. He covered her hand with his. And because you came here alone, knowing you'd probably die, just to give people a chance to see the truth. That's not someone I can walk away from. Her eyes glistened. You're gonna get us both killed. Maybe. But we'll go down swinging. She laughed, the sound catching between humor and despair. Then she kissed him again, slower this time, but no less intense. Her mouth moved against his with desperate urgency. His arms came around her, pulling her against him despite the armor. She tasted like fear and determination and something electric. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. The morning session starts in 20 minutes. We need to move. How do we get into the chamber? We don't use credentials. We use chaos. She pulled back. There's a maintenance shaft that opens into the chamber's ventilation system. We can access it from here. If we time it right, we can drop into the chamber during the opening ceremonies when security is focused on delegates and protocol. That's theatrical. That's the point. We need attention. We need every recording device in that chamber focused on us before they can shut us down. They navigated through the archives to another maintenance corridor. Alyra found the shaft, a vertical tunnel with ladder rungs built into the side. She climbed first. Jackson followed. The shaft was narrow and claustrophobic. Alyra stopped at various points to check her bearings, consulting a display on her wrist device. Almost there, they emerged onto a catwalk high above the summit chamber. Below, delegates were filing in. The lighting had been dimmed for opening ceremonies, making their position less visible. Jackson could see Calloway in the human delegation section, looking tense. The broadcast system, Alyra said, pointing to a control panel mounted on the chamber wall below. If we can reach that and upload the data before security responds, it'll transmit to every display in the chamber and automatically archive to each delegation's records. That's a long drop. There's a rope in the maintenance kit. She produced it, securing one end to the catwalk railing. We go together. When we land, you cover me while I upload. Once the transmission starts, nothing they do can stop it from completing. And after that, we face whatever comes. She tested the rope, then looked at him. Last chance to change your mind? Not a chance. She smiled, fierce and beautiful, her golden markings seeming to glow in the dim light. Then let's show them what happens when they underestimate the third house of Saravon. and one stubborn human. They descended together, the rope burning against Jackson's palms. Below, the opening ceremonies had begun. Their boots hit the marble floor simultaneously. The impact echoed, and dozens of heads turned toward them. "Go," Jackson said. Alyra sprinted toward the control panel while he positioned himself between her and security forces already moving. The first guard reached him in seconds, a hulking creature with 4 arms. Jackson sidestepped the grab, drove his elbow into a vulnerable joint, and used the creature's momentum to send it stumbling past. 2 more guards closed in. Jackson ducked under a swing, swept one's legs, and caught the other with a strike to the throat. 30 seconds, Alyra called out. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates were on their feet, some moving toward exits, others shouting orders. Calloway stood frozen, his face a mask of fury. Jackson grabbed a fallen guard's weapon, an energy baton, and activated it. The device hummed to life, crackling with blue electricity. 20 seconds. His shoulder screamed where one guard had landed a hit. He could taste blood, but he held his position. An insectoid figure emerged from the Consortium delegation, multi-limbed, compound eyes gleaming. Kethrix. The Consortium leader moved with predatory grace. "Stop this foolishness," Kethrix said. "You cannot win." 10 seconds, Alyra said. Kethrix rushed forward with impossible speed. One limb caught Jackson's wrist, forcing him to drop the weapon. Another wrapped around his throat. "You were supposed to distract her," Kethrix hissed, pulling him close. "Keep her occupied. Instead, you became a complication." The words hit like a physical blow. The ease with which he'd approached Alyra, his psychological profile. "You sent me," Jackson choked out. "We wanted you to keep her busy while we prepared the final solution." A human showing her kindness would keep her hopeful, compliant. Kethrix's grip tightened. "But you exceeded your parameters. You actually cared." "Done," Alyra said. Every display in the chamber flared to life. The surveillance footage played first. The figure with the Consortium mark entering Alyra's quarters, placing the explosive. Then the historical records scrolled across screens, the research findings, the mysterious deaths, the systematic elimination of the third house, finally, the technical specifications of the neural networks themselves, the hidden protocols, the influence pathways, the manipulation architecture that had been guiding galactic politics for 70 years. Kethrix's grip loosened as the leader's attention divided. "It doesn't matter," Kethrix said. "They won't believe it. The networks make them incapable." "Maybe," Alyra said, stepping away from the panel. Blood ran from a cut above her eye. "But the humans will believe it. They're not connected yet. And once one species sees the truth, others will question." She had something in her hand, a small device glowing with pale blue light. "That's why you really wanted to eliminate my people. Not just because we're immune, but because immunity is contagious. Philosophical theories won't save you." Kethrix lifted Jackson off his feet. "You'll both die here, probably, but you'll always know that we tried." She pressed the device. Every Consortium network node overloaded simultaneously. Delegates wearing neural implants convulsed, grabbing their heads as feedback screamed through their connections. Kethrix dropped Jackson, mandibles clicking. Jackson hit the floor hard. Alyra was at his side immediately, pulling him up. "What did you do?" Siska's parting gift. "A pulse generator tuned to Consortium frequencies. It'll disrupt every connection for about 10 minutes. She supported his weight as they moved toward the exit, long enough for people to think clearly. They ran through familiar corridors. Behind them, shouts echoed, but ahead, daylight. "The spaceport," Alyra said. They burst through the entrance into the 3-sun afternoon. A transport vehicle sat waiting, engine running, and Siska leaned out from the driver's position. "Get in. We have maybe 5 minutes." They threw themselves into the vehicle. Siska accelerated before they closed the doors. "The pulse worked beautifully," Siska said. "Half the Consortium delegates are still unconscious. What about the data? Jackson asked. Completed and archived in every delegation's secure records. It's out there now, permanent. Siska glanced back. You've started something significant. The spaceport appeared ahead. Siska pulled up to a private hangar where a small ship waited, engines already cycling. That's your ride, Siska said. Alyra grabbed Siska's shoulder. Come with us. Someone needs to stay and watch what happens next. Make sure the story spreads properly. They embraced quickly, then ran for the ship. Inside, the ship was cramped but functional. Jackson strapped into the co-pilot seat while Alyra took the controls. You know how to fly this? He asked. You don't survive 3 summits without learning how to leave in a hurry. The engines roared to life. Through the viewpoint, security vehicles approached, but Alyra was already lifting off. Where are we going? Jackson asked. Away from here, somewhere the Consortium's reach is weaker. I have contacts scattered across the sector, other survivors, species who refused the networks. She glanced at him. We'll spread the evidence, make sure it reaches people who can act on it. That's a long-term plan. It's the only plan I have. The ship climbed higher. Unless you have somewhere else you need to be. Jackson looked at her, blue skin bruised, golden markings still luminous, black braids partially loose. Her amber eyes met his, questioning and hopeful and fierce. I'm exactly where I need to be, he said. She smiled, completely unguarded for the first time. They broke atmosphere as pursuit ships launched. Alyra's hands flew across the controls, plotting a jump trajectory. Ready? She asked. Always. The jump drive engaged, and space twisted around them. When they emerged, they were in an empty sector between systems. The stars here looked different, colder, more distant. But beside him, Alyra was warm and alive and free. What now? She asked quietly. Now we figure out how to wake up a galaxy. He reached for her hand. Together. She interlaced her fingers with his. Together, she agreed. Alyra leaned over and kissed him, slow and deep and full of promise. When they broke apart, her forehead rested against his. Thank you, she whispered, for sitting beside me, for seeing me when everyone else looked away. Thank you for letting me. They stayed like that for a long moment, just breathing together, alive against all odds. Then Alyra turned to the navigation system. There's a colony 3 jumps from here. Small population, no Consortium presence. We can rest there, plan our next move. Her hands moved across the controls. After that, we start building a network of our own. Not one that controls people, but one that connects them. A resistance, a reminder that some things are worth fighting for, that some people refuse to be erased, that sitting beside someone when they're alone can change the course of history. The jump drive charged again. Jackson watched Alyra work. He'd walked into that summit hall looking for a diplomatic victory. He'd found something far more important. He found someone worth standing beside, worth fighting for. The jump drive reached capacity. Ready? Alyra asked again. Jackson squeezed her hand and smiled. With you? Always. They jumped together into the unknown. The colony of Varaxis Prime clung to the edge of a dying star system, a collection of habitation domes connected by pressurized tunnels. Alyra guided the freighter toward the landing platform with practiced ease. You've been here before, Jackson said. Twice. Once when I was young, once 3 years ago, running from assassins. She brought the ship down smoothly. The people here don't ask questions. The colony administrator met them at the platform, an elderly humanoid with pale green skin and weary eyes. Alyra. I saw the broadcasts. Every free system did. He gestured them forward. You've made yourself very dangerous. This is Jackson. He's with me. The administrator studied Jackson briefly, then led them through tunnels that smelled of recycled air and hydroponic gardens. Other colonists nodded at Alyra with recognition. In his sparse quarters, the administrator poured tea and got straight to business. The Consortium has issued warrants for your arrest. They're claiming terrorism, conspiracy, theft of classified information. How many systems aren't under their influence? Jackson asked. Fewer than you'd hope, more than they'd like. The administrator sipped his drink. Your broadcast reached 17 independent colonies, 4 non-aligned species councils, and approximately 300 ships. The evidence is spreading through channels the consortium can't control. But most species still believe the evidence was fabricated, Alyra said. Yes. However, there are pockets of resistance, groups who've been suspicious for years, waiting for proof. He leaned forward. They want leadership. The last survivor of the third house, working with a human to expose the truth. It's a powerful narrative. I'm not the last survivor. There are others, scattered, hiding, but alive. Then find them. Unite them. The administrator stood. Several colonies have pledged support. The Independent Traders Guild is offering transport. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we begin building your network. They were given small quarters with a window overlooking the dying star. Alyra stood at the window, and Jackson moved behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. Are you sure about this? She asked. About giving up everything for a fight that might never end? I didn't give up everything. I gave up comfort and certainty. What I have now is worth more. She turned in his arms, her amber eyes searching his face. What do you have now? Purpose. Partnership. You. She kissed him soft and slow, her hands sliding up to frame his face. I never thought I'd have this. Someone who chose to stand beside me just because they saw me and decided I was worth the risk. You are worth the risk. You're worth everything. They moved to the sleeping area, hands exploring with growing urgency. He helped her remove the armor she'd worn for days, revealing bruises and cuts. She traced the marks on his throat where Kethrix had grabbed him. We match, she said. Both of us damaged by the same fight. Both of us still here. They came together with desperate intensity, reaffirming life in the aftermath of near death. Her skin was hot against his, her breath coming in sharp gasps. She pulled him closer, and he surrendered to the sensation of her, alien and familiar, dangerous and safe, everything he hadn't known he'd been searching for. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing the golden markings on her face. Tell me about the third house, he said. She was quiet for a long moment, lonely. Always moving, never staying anywhere long enough to form attachments. My parents were killed when I was young. After that, I was raised by other survivors, passed from one hiding place to another. Her fingers drew patterns on his chest. I learned to fight, to fly, to survive. But I never learned how to trust, how to let anyone close. Until now. Until you sat beside me like I mattered. She lifted her head. That changed everything. He kissed her forehead, then her lips. For me too. Morning came with a knock. The administrator stood outside with a data pad. Your network is growing faster than anticipated. 16 colonies pledged port overnight. The Traders Guild is offering 20 ships. And 3 members of the third house have made contact. They want to meet. Over the following weeks, they traveled from colony to station to hidden outpost. Each meeting followed a similar pattern, skepticism giving way to cautious hope as Alyra shared the evidence. Each survivor had their own story, a loss, but slowly they began to believe. The third survivor they met was Saravon, a woman who could have been Alyra's sister. She led a resistance cell inside Consortium territory. I never thought I'd see another of our house, Saravon said, embracing Alyra fiercely. There are more. We're finding them. When they left, Saravon promised to reach out to other survivors. We're building something real, she said, something that might actually change things. Back on the freighter, Jackson reviewed messages from the growing network. Reports came in from across the sector, resistance, sabotage, colonies declaring independence. It's working, he said. People are fighting back. People are dying. Alyra corrected quietly. The Consortium is cracking down. 3 colonies blockaded, 2 resistance cells eliminated. So we make sure those consequences mean something. She turned from the navigation console. When this is over, if we survive, what happens to us? What do you want to happen? I want to stop running. I want a home somewhere. A place where I don't have to constantly look over my shoulder. She moved closer. I want to wake up beside you without wondering if today's the day they finally catch us. He pulled her into his arms. Then that's what we'll build. A galaxy where you can be safe, where your people can exist without fear. That's a lot to promise. I don't make small promises. She kissed him, pouring everything she felt into the contact. I love you, she whispered. I didn't want to. It makes everything more complicated. But I do. I love you too, he smiled. But I've never been good at simple. The navigation console chimed. Through the viewport, a massive station hung in space, neutral territory where species gathered to trade. This is it, Alyra said. The Independent Traders Guild wants to meet. If we can get them fully on our side, we'll have transport capacity anywhere in the sector. They docked and made their way to the guild hall. Inside, representatives from dozens of species gathered around a central platform. As they entered, conversation stopped. A massive figure stepped forward, something like a bear crossed with a reptile, covered in bronze scales. You're the ones who broke the Consortium's summit. Why should we risk our ships, our crews, our livelihoods for your fight? Alyra climbed onto the platform. Because it's not just my fight. It's everyone's. The Consortium has been manipulating galactic politics for 70 years. They've eliminated entire bloodlines, suppressed technology, controlled trade routes. She gestured at the assembled traders. How many of you have lost contracts to Consortium-aligned companies? How many have been denied routes without explanation? We're offering you a chance to break their monopoly, to create a network outside their control. Yes, there's risk, but if we succeed, you'll have true independence. The bronze-scaled figure studied her, then slowly extended a massive hand. The Independent Traders Guild stands with you. Cheers erupted through the hall. Alyra climbed down, and Jackson caught her in his arms. That was incredible. He said that was necessary. But she was smiling. They spent hours coordinating with guild representatives. By the time they returned to their ship, exhaustion had settled deep. We're really doing this, Alyra said, collapsing onto the sleeping platform. We're building a resistance. We're building more than that. Jackson lay beside her, pulling her close. We're building hope. She turned to face him, her golden markings glowing softly. Thank you. For sitting beside me that first night. For seeing me. For choosing this fight. Thank you for letting me. They fell asleep tangled together, 2 people from different worlds who'd found each other in chaos and decided that together they could change the galaxy. Outside the V-port, stars wheeled in endless patterns. The Consortium was still hunting them. The fight was far from over, but for the first time in 70 years, the hunted were hunting back, and they were no longer alone.